with all due respect to my colleagues, I think you have the best two here now. So with that, we'll make it do what it do. All right.
All right.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Ramsey.
You know what?
We can hear you.
I'm sorry. Just give me a sec to fix audio on our side. Your volume all the way down. Councilman, is that better? Can you no echo?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then I will.
See, Councilmember Brissett is on. Councilmember Palmer, are you on too?
I am on. Councilmember
Sorry.
Russo, how are you this wonderful rainy morning?
Well, it wouldn't be a public works meeting without the torrential downpour at the very beginning. You seem to have a special knack for that. Good morning, Jared. How are you? Good. All right. Well, with three members and with Councilmember Brissett joining, why don't we get started because we'll take the 10-minute break. Good morning, everybody. We're still in COVID times, obviously, and so we are conducting these meetings virtually. What I will do is call this meeting to order right now. I want to thank everybody who's on the line. For the record, at the beginning part of this meeting, we have myself and council members Banks and Palmer as part of the committee. Council member Brissett is here. I see Council member Glapion has also joined. I will read the agenda and then we will take a quick 10-minute break and then come back on to address the topics. I think many of my colleagues, including some who don't sit on this committee, are here particularly for item number 3. So with that, we've done number 1, roll call. Number 2, approval of the minutes from the March 18, 2021 Public Works Committee meeting. Number 3, presentation by the Department of Public Works, DPW, on status of current and future citywide joint infrastructure recovery request projects. And as part of that, A, in concert with JIRR, status of bond funding and using bond funds to supplement JIRR work. Number 4, talking about the rain, discussion of DPW's hurricane preparedness, including A, contractor responsibilities to secure active JIRR roadwork sites in preparation for severe weather, and B, status of catch basin and lateral line cleaning. Number 5, DPW update on citywide striping and signage installation. And then number 6, adjournment. So by my clock, it's a little after 10:02. Councilmember Moreno is also joined. Please let the record reflect. We'll stand at ease for 10 minutes and then we will be back at 10:13. Thank you, everybody. colleagues, 2-minute warning will be coming back in 2 minutes. Thank you. All right, let's call the meeting back to order. I'm going to reestablish quorum and check in. Councilmember Moreno,
Present.
Councilmember Glapion, Councilmember Banks,
Present.
Councilmember Palmer,
Present.
Councilmember Brissett.
Present.
Thank you. All right, let's go down the agenda, please. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the March 18, 2021 Public Works meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Moreno, second. I'll second it.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Banks. Councilmember Banks, second. All in favor? Aye. All right, so that will be 4 yays and no nays. The next issue is one that we wanted to get on the docket. In fact, I talked with the former DPW director about doing at this time. I just wanted to sort of say at the outset, I think Councilmember Banks even reflected this the other night. It's encouraging to see how many infrastructure projects are going on across the city. I saw for the first time this morning the city's presentation. I think except in one district, every single district has 13 or more projects going on. And it's important not only that we spend the money, but obviously we're improving the streets of New Orleans. And so every neighborhood we know is feeling the impact of what's going on. And I think the phrase that you'll hear a lot and that we all know is there is pain and progress. And I think the things that I really want to focus on are 2 questions that we're getting a lot from residents regarding JIRR work, this FEMA-related work in the public, which are timelines and communications. And if there's going to be these projects that are going on across the city, then what is the timeline? For example, just a simple question. If a street repair starts, when is that street going to be finished? And if there's a delay in what happens, then what caused the delay? What's going to end the delay? And when will people know about the delays? And that sort of segues into the next point, which is just communication. Making sure that the contractors are in communication with the public, or project managers are, and I'm going to emphasize this point sort of repeatedly for as long as I can. A number of us on this committee are on the utilities committee. And the one thing you hear from all of us all the time is communication is key. And whether it's a pre-construction meeting, which I know the administration is doing, which is great, but there probably need to be regular check-ins as well. There need to be either visibility at community meetings, meeting with a committee, but making sure that that people know what's going on. And just so the public is informed about what's happening. And I know we're going to talk today about holding contractors responsible, but part of this is not only what a process looks like for holding contractors responsible, making sure work is completed in timely fashion, and then also making sure that the contracts are being adhered to. Because the goal is knowing that there is these problems, making sure that we're making headway and not headlines with them. So I think some of my other colleagues may want to weigh in on this. Is there anything anybody wants to say at the beginning about a project in their district or what they're seeing with JIR regularly? If anybody wants to come off of mute, I'm happy to kind of go down the list. All right.
Joe, I'm sorry. I was in another meeting. I apologize. But yeah, talking about specific projects, I definitely do have questions about Irish Channel and the fixing of the infrastructure is absolutely essential. I get that. But is there any way to get it to a point where we give a finite definition or finite timeline to those residents as to when they can expect? And one of my biggest problems is I don't think anybody is opposed to the work being done, but it can't be done in perpetuity. We need to have far better communications, letting residents know what their expectations are. And I don't think that that has actually happened in the Irish Channel, and that is extremely frustrating. I was out there a couple of days ago. We also had the thing over on Conti Street, and I think that there's a hole in the bucket somewhere. Now, I want to be clear to everybody. We need to get the streets fixed, but before we fix the streets, everything that's under them needs to be repaired. That old methodology that we used to have of digging up a street in January, putting out a brand new street, and then coming back in November and digging it up again because sewage and water had a pipe break, we shouldn't do that anymore. Everything should be done when the street is open. That should be the way we continue. I get that. So it takes longer to do that, but we need to be open and communicating with the residents as to what they can expect. And that's my 2 cents, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's the theme you're going to hear from all of us. I don't know. Was Councilmember Moreno? Did you come off mute? Councilmember Palmer?
I just want to follow up on what Councilmember Banks was talking about. Absolutely, and I agree with both you, Chair, and Councilmember Banks on the communication piece. But I think really what I'm looking for in today's meeting is, what are some of the solutions that we have so that that the work continues? Because the complaints that I hear about citywide is that, work will start, a street will be, dug up, and then for some reason, crews don't show up for, sometimes a couple of weeks or more. And then they come back and a little bit of work is done and then, they don't show up. So A, what's potentially causing that problem? But B, what type of solutions are out there so that the work consistently continues with the contractors? And I know we're going to talk about oversight and things like that. And I'm a little bit concerned about the change orders that have been occurring. But like I said, I think if we can talk about solutions and how the situation is going to get better, I think that would be, a really productive way to move forward with this meeting. Sorry, my dog's barking.
Thank you. Tell Nacho not to be upset about this. Councilmember Palmer.
No, I was just going to echo actually what Councilmember Banks said. I mean, obviously I have specific questions about some of the groups, but I think I'd rather hear out DPW and let them address it first. And then maybe we could ask questions either during it or after.
That sounds good. Councilmember Brissett, did you want to add anything? I know you're not a member of the committee, but you're here.
Thank you, Joe. I'll let them proceed with the presentation.
Okay. Well, can we do this? DPW, I feel like the things that you've heard have pretty much been uniform, right? Which is timeline, communication, solutions. what I would like to do, and I'm happy if you all want to go through all the slides, but I would ask that we kind of go through slides 1 through 8 fairly quickly, and showing the work that's going on. I think it's important for you all to take the recognition that that's happening. But I think it's slide number 9 where we start to get to that solution and what's going on, where I think people are going to want to hear from a macro perspective what's happening. And then as we have questions maybe about projects in our own district or solution oriented, how we handle those. Does that work? Hey, Ramsey, if you're talking, you're on mute.
All right, sorry. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hold on, let's hang that up. Sorry, Councilman, we were trying to do the phone for the audio and the video via Zoom, and that failed miserably. So can you hear me okay now?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, we get a little skittish internet coverage up here, so I was trying to make sure you never lost audio, so I apologize if I suddenly disappear or something. First off, thank you. Yeah, I think that's a fine use of our time. And to all of the members of the council who aired what I just want to be clear. I'm hearing communication as a thing, timelines, and we're going to get into that because there are some real things we all need to understand about that. And Councilwoman Moreno, you mentioned solutions, and I really appreciate you focusing, on that. That's a great thing. Councilman Jeruso, if you would permit me, I think I'd like to at least do the first whatever number of the slides you just referenced, just to give sort of level set on the sandbox we're talking about.
Sure.
And if I can, I just have a few opening comments, if that would be okay.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Ramsey.
All right. Thank you so much. And Councilman Jeruso, if you can if I start cutting out, just give me a wave of the hand or something and I'll stop talking. And I'm not going to try and talk a whole lot. If I can, I'd like to introduce everybody from the administration and the Sewage and Water Board on this call. You've got Sarah McLaughlin-Porteous, who runs our communications shop and infrastructure, Roadwork NOLA. You have David Schulman, who's the lead construction manager for the Sewage and Water Board. You've got Mary Kincaid, who runs our green infrastructure projects, particularly those funded by HUD in the Gentilly area. Courtney Barnes, communications from the Sewage and Water Board. Josh Hartley, Deputy Director for Operations for the Department of Public Works. Joe Threat, Director of the Project Delivery Unit. Ron Spooner, who is the Interim General Superintendent for the Sewage and Water Board. And Ron, just so you are all aware, retired last month after a long career in the Naval Reserves and was deployed last year. And it's really good to have him back. It's good to see you, Ron, and thank you for your service. Commander retired. I was really happy to hear that. And I don't know, did I miss anybody from our side? Who? Oh, Randy Jones. I'm sorry, I didn't see Randy's face on my little screen here. Randy Jones is our administrator for the Joint Infrastructure Program. And DPW brought her over from Sewage and Water Board last year, midway through the summer, and really to get somebody in that position who knew Sewage and Water Board and knew DPW to ensure that this very complicated program is moving full rudder. And that's kind of where we're at now. So if I can, Councilman, I want a little bit of just general comments. One, I think this is the first time we've talked to you guys about this program since quite some time, and it's been a very dramatic last 12 months, to say the least. And I want to start my comments talking about our people, specifically, and whoever's driving this slide, if you can go to slide 3, I'd really appreciate it. We have incredible folks in the Sewage and Water Board and the Department of Public Works. And these people have, despite a pandemic, threats to their health and their jobs, they have kept this ship moving. And, it was National Engineers Week about a month ago when we started doing little profiles of some of our folks. And those are what you're seeing on our screen. Alan Yarrow runs all of our signs and signals. Javier runs our maintenance shop. Megan Williams is one of our civil engineers focused on green infrastructure, and Jennifer Ruley runs our modality and cycling world. Our folks keep this work going. And I never want to talk about the future right now without acknowledging the past that our city government has faced over the last 12 to 14 months. We had 8 moments of being in a cone of uncertainty in 2020. We had a pandemic. We had our folks challenged in ways that were really unprecedented. And Mayor Cantrell made construction an essential service from day one. And we tried to find a book that said pandemic and construction sites, and there's really no guidebook for that. And we recognize that this work serves the public safety. It makes our city more functional, and it keeps us safe, and it helps our economy immeasurably. When I think about the work that these folks have done, not just the folks on the screen, but Jerome Casby runs maintenance at DPW, who's out at 2 in the morning in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a storm, Keenan from that side, our folks are getting things done. And I don't, you work in infrastructure in this city, and oftentimes it's a little bit, you just hear the negative. And I really appreciate you giving us this moment to do celebrate our people, because they have had a hell of a year. They have had a hell of a year. Their families have had a hell of a year. And despite that, whether they're accountants, parking enforcement officers working at our vaccine site, making sure people safely can get vaccinated, volunteers, tow truck drivers, and they're engineers and they're humanitarians, and they're keeping the work going. And I just cannot talk about our people enough. About leadership, you made a reference to our loss of Keith LaGrange, Councilman Giarrusso. You hire good people and then they go. When sometimes they leave, and we lost Keith LaGrange to become DPW chief in Mandeville. He's been gone, I want to say, about 6 weeks. And it was fairly, we didn't have a lot of time. And so I am much more deeper in DPW over the last 6 weeks than I had been previously, just to analyze, understand, in part, and I would say the vast majority, the issues you were bringing up: communications, timeline on contracts, et cetera. In the last 3 to 6 months, we've issued so much work out of DPW that it's almost like we went from a sort of small, mid-sized corporation to a multinational corporation, and getting this work managed effectively and delivered for our residents is our biggest focus right now. We also lost Bob Turner, who is our general superintendent for the Sewage and Water Board, who did retire, incredibly committed to his work. And Ron Spooner has stepped up into that role and really hasn't hesitated, and he knows the Sewage and Water Board immensely well. I would say, as I've gone through this sort of analysis of this work, one thing that is very apparent to me is the Sewage and Water Board and DPW are working well together in ways that I don't think our residents are used to. We're communicating, we're talking, we trust one another, and communication comes from trust. And being out on the job sites in the last 6 weeks that I've been, at least 5-6 job sites a week, getting to know our folks at the level in the streets. And I would invite any city councilman to come to one of these meetings when we go to our projects that we're hearing a lot on. We go out there, we get the GC, we get the A&E, we get the inspector, and we talk about what's going on. And they're a really educational process, and we're seeing some real dividends from that. So if I can go to the first slide, Councilman Giarrusso, and just sort of talk about the program. There we go. All right. So just to kind of level set, in December 2015, $2 billion was awarded, and this is all Katrina damage. It's important to remember, for roads and subsurface infrastructure. This council and Mayor Cantrell came into office May 17th. 10 projects were under construction. They were very early. They had really barely started largely. Since that time, and I cannot thank this council enough, because I will never say that this problem of infrastructure in this city is our problem. This is your problem, if not more, than it is ours. I'm not elected by my neighbors and my friends. You are. You have no excuse to not answer a text message at 2 a.m. from not, you know what I mean? But like you get everybody coming at you about this stuff. And we do too, but it's a different thing for you, and I get that. But you have made this, spend this money, get this work going as big a priority, and you've allowed us to do that, and I cannot thank you enough. Since that time, We've got 61 projects right now, and I think it's important to point out, these are the joint infrastructure projects. About 600 million is under construction at this moment. 28 projects have been completed, about 151 million, and we've got 80 projects into final design totaling 732 million. The joint infrastructure project program is broken into what we call waves. Wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, wave 5. We're still only at about wave 2, wave 3. When we walked in the door, we were at wave 0 largely. But waves 2 and 3 are sort of more tighter designs. We've come in not inheriting designs that has sort of been very rough, budgeted very rough. And I think we're going to see some real substantial, good stuff happening forward. Current status with estimated values. The program spending has greatly accelerated. We've got approximately 15% reimbursed of the entire work that we have out. And that's a credit to Joe Threat and his team, Kim DeLarge, all those guys making sure that all the documents go to the federal government, go to the governor's office of Homeland Security, which is the fiscal agent for all these funds. And the money comes from the feds, it goes to the state, and then it goes to the city, and it goes to Sewage and Water Board. And managing the accounting and the accountability for that is a complex process. It is the most complex dollars that we have within this city in terms of managing and being accountable for them. And getting that 15% reimbursed is a real credit, given that we walked in the door and we were at 0% 2.5 years ago. 48 projects are under construction, bid and awards 22, final designs 49, which will be coming down the pike soon, and 28 projects at 151 is done. If we can go to the 2 slides forward. All right, bonds. Councilman Giarrusso, you had this on the agenda. I do want to speak to this. As you all know, in November of 2019, the residents, voters of the city approved 500 million in spending on infrastructure bonds. And, the hardest part we had with that was when we walked in the door, the city was incapable of issuing a tax exempt bond. We were desperate for bond money, so we did issue taxable bonds of $50 million in 2019. But the problem had been the city prior to the Cantrell administration coming in was not spending its bond money quickly enough. We had fallen outside of the requirement of spending 85% of funds within the first 3 years of issuing the bonds. Quite frankly, the city was not spending its money fast enough and then would have to pay taxes on public bonds, which is just a very unfortunate fiscal management position to be in. So we got the voters to approve the 500, and during that time, our folks have spent the bonds down. So we are on track this summer, still working on the details. It's got to come out of the Board of Liquidation, and there's a lot of sort of financial steps to get there to issue 300 million or so, potentially more, bonds that are sort of more flexible, of course, than federal grant money. We briefed every one of the council members last fall on the projects and the direction we're headed on that. We haven't very much strayed from that other than, you can get a future briefing on where we're headed on that once we get a little closer to the date. We're looking at this moment, council members, around June, July for being able to issue those bonds. Though they are committed to the same percentages that was communicated to voters, which was 50% roads, stormwater, drainage, 45% vertical infrastructure, and 5% affordable housing. The bonds are used to augment joint infrastructure projects, where you've got a certain part of a neighborhood is funded by feds, and then this part is ignored. And we were trying to really make as much of a bang in the buck and dig once, Councilman Banks said, using several layers of revenue. We can go to the next slide. All right, I'm just going to go very quickly through these, Councilman Giarrusso and other council members.
Ramsey, I'm just going to stop for a second because I appreciate what's being said, but I feel like we're in Cool Hand Luke right now. Like, we have a failure to communicate. And I'm going to read a couple of the comments that I've got. I have 18 comments on this, which is a lot for a committee meeting on something. And they're spread across the city. And I think people need to hear these because there's several from District B, there's several from District A, I've got a couple in here from District C. I think we need to kind of level set where we are and get to slide number 9. So I'm going to read these. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm going to read one from each district and one that I don't have an address for, because I think this is what people want to hear. So the first one's from Chrissy Bushman. She lives in District B. She says, as a resident of the Garden District, I find it very problematic that we have so many projects that have torn up our roads and make navigating through the area quite difficult at times. These projects disrupt errands, parking, in some cases, the livelihood of businesses and homeowners. We all know that city projects rarely get completed on time. Wouldn't it be prudent to finish a project before starting a new one, or at least limit the amount in progress at any one time? There's one project I know of that has been abandoned, leaving residents there in an unsavory and dangerous situation. City planners need to care more about its residents and less about profit or subpar companies doing shoddy work. Someone needs to step up and organize current projects and get them done. The next one is from Gilbert Crowden, who's in District C. I tried for over 6 months to get an update on street repairs and tall timbers from Mr. LaGrange and the staff, sent many emails with no response. I must say, over 3 years, I've been able to speak with every department head except for Mr. LaGrange, and after speaking with residents in St. Bernard Parish, this was a problem where he worked there. I would hope this is addressed by the mayor, and every resident deserves a return email. It's called common courtesy. Mr. Crowden, you heard he's not here anymore, so we'll work to improve that. Next one, I don't have an address, Emily Barr, who writes, I appreciate efforts to improve our street. I'm willing to accept a certain degree of disruption. The lack of communication about the scope and timeline of the project verges on comical. We've not been able to get a clear sense of timeline or what to expect from the city or the contractor, despite extensive efforts to get answers. We have tenants moving in a couple of days, and I still don't know where to tell them to legally park, nor do I know if or when the bridge built to connect my driveway at my request by a bulldozer operator on site will be removed. My neighbors and I were given no notice of anything other than the fact that undefined work was set to begin on a certain date. Many of us came home to find cars stranded in driveways, and some found cars moved from driveways to make way for construction without warning. To be clear, none of the destruction in it is in itself problematic, but the total lack of information from the city and contractor has been outrageous. And then from District A, the streets in Maple Street area are a mess. Deep holes, unfinished road work that's been going on for months. In front of my house, they started working on the streets in February, completing only one side just with the concrete and not doing the blacktop. The other side, the one that has not been started, is now crumbling with deep ruts. And this is from Richard Bienvenu. It has been over a month since any work was done. Maple Street is like a bombed out area with cliffs in the street and places so terrible that cars have to drive into a parking lot and go around to avoid the deep holes. Ferret at Burdett has been broken up for months with some work done, but most of it just a huge deep gash among a block long that has been blocked and completely impassable. Short Street at Butte and Ferret has been a dirt road since October. It's completely inexcusable that this is happening. It's a shame that the city is allowing this to happen to its citizens and their neighborhoods. Who's the project manager? Why are there only a few workers doing any work? Why are there dozens more crews out there completing the work? Why do we go for days, weeks before we see anyone working on the streets in the Maple area? Something needs to be done and done now. And I'll stop there because I feel like y'all, again, we're on the ground and we're hearing this all the time. And if you listen to what everybody said, it's sort of what we've said at the beginning of the meeting. Everybody knows there's going to be disruptions and everybody wants the work to happen. But you've heard the words timelines and communication and solutions like 3 or 4 times. I think I just want to go to slide 9 now. And really, I think that's what we're all focused on is we know there's a great amount of work going on. We're appreciative of the great amount of work going on. It's a credit, Ramsey, to you, to your team, to the mayor, to the administration, how much is being rolled out. But you're hearing across the city, not just from individual council members, but people who took the time to write in the same themes over and over. And so, I mean, I think rather than keep on pounding on sort of what the problems are, let's start talking about solutions to what's going to start changing it. So I see the first one is contract durations. Can we start with talking about that, please?
So, sure. And what I really want the council to know is hear it too. I hear it, we're aware of it, we live here, and we're working to solve those problems. And, you know, I appreciate the public taking the time to write comments. We get it. I'm going to introduce one thing here, and I think it's important, is that when the scopes for the joint infrastructure program in wave 1, wave 2 were written, they were done in a way, and by scope, I mean the work that needed to be done within the street, on top of the street, what is the street, they were very rough. And those are the projects that you're seeing under construction now. So we are discovering things as the work moves on. So I'm actually gonna really rely on Randy Jones to help on this slide. But I'm gonna hit the first one, the first couple bullets very directly for you, Councilman. Number one, ensuring contract durations are aligned with the scope of work. What that is we have noticed, and this is in the last few, let's just say the last 2 months, that I think some of our contracts have too many days in them. And what that means is contractors don't have the incentive to get the work done at a pace that matches what a resident's expectation is. The policy, as I understand, that sort of determined those days was just, very helpful, very engineering focused. But what we're learning from seeing this work go now is what can move quicker and what takes a little bit more time. We are evaluating that, and we're looking to make some adjustments in our future contracts. Second bullet, infrastructure leadership team site visits.
Can I stop, Ramsey? I'm sorry. Can I stop there? So can you tell me about that a little bit? Because your point makes sense, right? Not all projects are the same, and some are going to just need more TLC than the others.
Sure.
Is there a way that DPW is going to be able to tell, I'll just make up one, Irish Channel Group B, that we've now shortened the original contract from, again, I'm making up days, 180 days to 90 days, and we're going to keep people on track? Like how is that going to be decided, and how is it going to be communicated?
I'd like to rely on Randy to help answer this, but I want to put a caveat on the example that you just said, Councilman, is that the work right now that's underway, I don't know how much this adjustment is going to help. What I want is to really, because those days are set on the front end of a contract. I want to make sure that everything coming out, because we're only 20% through this thing right now, is shortened. The project management side of identifying what the delay is, et cetera, that's where we're making the Irish Channel problem be solved. So I just want to, you are an attorney, Councilman, I'm not, but I want to make sure you understand we're looking at the contract language for all future projects, and then in the management of the contract, cutting days on the delivery. Randy, can you elaborate on that, please?
Hi.
Randy.
Good morning. So when we are assessing contract durations during the design and scope, we are looking at the complexity of a project. We're looking at whether or not we have scope in a line, several blocks on one street where crews can just one behind the other track infrastructure and the streets above it. And then there's another where we have buckshot, patch mill and overlay, as Ramsey was describing earlier. So what we are seeing citywide right now is the bulk of these projects are wave 1 and wave 2, where it was originally patch mill and overlay, kind of just a buckshot all throughout the city. Well, what happens is we're chasing infrastructure, and we knew that. We had infrastructure that was neglected for so long, and we had a large job ahead of us. And when we opened the cap and the street, we found infrastructure that needed to be addressed. That story is different depending on what infrastructure and problems we uncover when we take that bonnet off of the street. So what you are seeing in some of these delays is the project team assessing the damage and figuring out what needs to be done before creating the street on top and closing it up and walking away. We want to be the most comprehensive in our approach while we're there. And we understand that it is an inconvenience to have our streets open, but it is better than failure in the future.
Well, Randy, can I ask a question? Just I want to step through this, okay? And And again, I'm not a DPW person, but just trying to understand it from a constituent's perspective, right? So we're going to do work, and I'm just going to make up a project, and we'll use that hypothetical, the whole Mardi Gras Group A, okay? And so there's, as Ramsey said at the very beginning, there's a detailed pre-construction meeting. I've been to them. You have a table of contractors, DPW, sewage and water board, utilities workers. Okay. You have a scope of work that says we're going to do A, B, and C. Now you get to Main Street in Mardi Gras Group A. Is there an evaluation that's made before a shovel hits that street about, hey, it says patch mill overlay, but we really need to do full repair, or there needs to be, curbs and sidewalks that are added? I'm just trying to understand the process from the beginning through when a problem may arise in the field that wasn't anticipated, and then if a problem arises, how that's communicated. Does that make sense?
Yes. So there's several layers to that. Moving forward in our waves 3 and 4, all of our projects are full reconstruct. So you're going to see a more comprehensive approach where all of it is included, just as you stated. The projects that have already been through those design phases and are out on the street, we are limited to that scope until we up scope, until we plan change those things in. So we are walking sites at the beginning of these projects. We are including CCTV on drain lines, more frequently, and will be for every project. But again, we don't know what we're gonna get until we open the street with some things. We may open up the street and have a water line point repair needed. And as soon as we patch it, we have one pop up 5 feet down.
Yeah, no, I know that's an issue. I want to make sure, again, because I know we tend to all be in the lingo a little bit, that I'm understanding all this. So what is happening right now are wave 1 and 2 work, where you may have some full reconstruction, but you may have simple patch mill overlay. And so that will require in many instances an upscope, right? In other words, to give you better quality street for whoever is in Mardi Gras Group A. How long does it take if work is beginning to go from patch mill overlay to full reconstruction, or to add other pieces as a result of that?
Well, to go from patch mill and overlay to a full reconstruct would be a significant plan change that would require an FEMA, an environmental historic preservation review, because you are only cleared for street surface. I believe that's 16 inches on top. And then in order to do your utilities underneath, instead of point repairs and a full reconstruct, you're looking at 2 to 3 weeks for FEMA review alone. And that's not getting it designed and your funding memos for all your funding sources ahead of that. So there is some design work when you have a full reconstruct.
All right. And then in that process, can you tell me, does the DPW project manager reach out to neighbors on the street and say, look, we're wanting to go from a patch mill overlay to a full reconstruct for you. We want you to have much better street than you had before. So therefore, it's going to be 4 weeks between the time FEMA does it, we get the approval, and then this is where it is. How's that communicated?
Councilmember Giarrusso, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Good morning.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah, so at the point when we know that there is going to be a break in the work that's going on to determine what kind of upgrades are going to be added to the project, we will start communicating with the neighbors on that block. That's when we use, we have a lot of different tactics, but that's when we'll use neighborhood canvassing. So we'll actually, do a flyer and, walk the blocks that may be impacted to let them know, that there's going to be a break in construction. We also use our monthly newsletter to put an update in there. The difficulty is we don't always know the duration. We don't always know how long that break is going to be. So in many cases, we're estimating, and we certainly do give, longer windows just to sort of give people worst case scenario. But, I would say if there's going to be a significant upscope, it's probably going to be a couple months delay.
Okay. And let me ask this question. I think Ramsey made a good point too, which is there's different waves, and obviously the way that this is being handled depends on, is it a wave 1 job, wave 2? Now waves 3 and 4 are going to be full reconstruction. Is there any, I guess maybe the first way to ask the question is everything that is being done right now in wave 1 and 2? And then secondly, is there any way either for the work that's being done right now, or if we have wave 1 and 2 work that's remaining, to upscope it at the front end so that way it gets full reconstruct? Or because of the way that it was done in the past, we're sort of stuck with having to do it almost in an a la carte method?
So that's twofold. I'm sorry, Ramsey, did you want to add to that?
No, go ahead, Randy. I mean, but basically, Councilman Druso, if I can sort of, you are dead on in describing this. The aberration of this program, unfortunately, is on the front end, which is what you're seeing in terms of the multiple holes in a neighborhood, and then the time required to move it to a full reconstruction project. But Randy, please.
Sure. So we are currently on, up in the air in the plane and building it. And so we are past certain milestones for addressing it on the front end. And depending on how many blocks you're upscoping, we are talking about a significant amount of time to design those things. And we have a very small window to get a lot of infrastructure complete. And so what we have looked at upscoping these projects for which it makes sense to provide a complete street and utilities where we can, and to get it done within the program scope and time.
And I guess Randy and Ramsey, are there more projects that haven't broken ground yet that are on waves 1 and 2 that can be altered, or is it because they're in the procedural place that they are, we have to deal with that as it comes? And then what will be the point where we migrate to wave 3 work?
So I don't believe we have any waves 1 remaining to go out the door. We do, I believe, have a few wave 2. We have been working to upscope those and do as much as we can before that plan set gets finalized and bid out. Those have been our lessons learned that we've been implementing for months now. So we have been trying to take a more comprehensive approach. We understand what our problems have been and it's mostly been our unforeseen, right? Because we like to be predictable. Full reconstruct is more predictable in what we're going to find and what we need to do rather than the sight unseen.
All right, so I feel like in terms of going back to Councilmember Moreno's point about solutions, I guess 3 things. One is, what I'm hearing is some of these contracts that have been let have just had too much time built in, and so DPW is going to work on shortening that period of time. Then number 2, on the wave 2 work that's remaining to be done, that more front end work, which is great, is being done by DPW and the other stakeholders to try and bypass, I guess, some of the bureaucratic holdup that happens when you're dealing with federal money. And then I guess just proactively, can I ask for all the district council members who are going to have more wave 2 work, they know what those projects are going to be, so that way we can anticipate and work with in partnership with DPW and our neighbors about that. Councilmember Brissett, I see you popped up. Do you have something you wanted to say?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. No, just what you said is informing the district council members about what those projects are.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Councilmember Banks, I see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just piggybacking on some of the comments that were made. First of all, let me say, I am elated that we are in a position now that when you start work on the street and you see something else is wrong, that we are fixing it when you see it. Because I thought it was absolutely asinine to repair a street and then come back 6 months later and dig it up again to fix something that should have been fixed when it was open. I get that. I also sincerely believe that no resident is going to be angry about the work that's taking place to make sure that the street is in a position that it'll last for much longer and we don't have to come right back and dig it up. I think the disconnect, however, comes when that information isn't shared. So if the initial timeline was 6 months and it's going to take longer, I think we need to be far more intentional about letting the residents know, hey, look, we found a XYZ problem and it's going to take us an additional 2 months to get this fixed. I think that would go a long way in fixing the problem. I don't think any resident does not want to see this work proceed. I think the problem comes in is that the ambiguity of the timeline is what has people frustrated. Now, I understand the process when you go from the different waves and it takes time to get all of that stuff done. But if a citizen who can't park in a driveway for a month and sees not near person out there digging, shoveling, or on a tractor, that frustration level grows every day because they don't know that it has moved from tier A to tier B or wave 1 to wave 2. And I think that's where the wheels are coming off. If we need to be far more conscientious about letting folks know exactly where these processes are taking place. And I think we'll do much to get the public's ire going down. And I think that's where we are now on just a logistical, and I'm not an engineer, don't work at Sewage and Water Board or DPW, I'm not a lawyer or an engineer like you, Ramsey, so forgive me if my question is dumb. Just to give you an example in Irish Channel, you've got St. Thomas dug up, you've got Harmony dug up, I think a part of Pleasant is dug up, and I don't know enough about this to know, so I need you to educate me. Would it be better to just say go down Pleasant Street and put all of those different crews on Pleasant Street, get Pleasant Street straight, and then go over to St. Thomas instead of having them all dug up at the same time? Now help me understand that because I'm confused.
So, Council, can you hear me? I was having some audio issues there.
I can hear you.
Okay, all right. First off, Councilman, cannot agree with you more. We almost solved kind of one problem, and then we have another problem that comes after. It's like Councilman Giarrusso, I use fleur-de-lis as the example. You get a great street, you get it done, and then suddenly people are like, they're driving too fast. And it's like we solve one problem. We're not digging twice, but that person, it doesn't matter to them what the issue is if they don't know why their damn hole in front of their house and they can't get to, it drives me insane. So here's what I would say, Councilman Banks. We do have a slide in here about improving roadwork NOLA. So Councilman Giarrusso, I'm all good if you want to choose certain things. Let's not eliminate that slide. And I want Sarah to talk through that so you guys get that. We need better timelines shown on roadwork NOLA because we're actually finishing stuff. The question you ask, and I'm going to answer it at somewhat of a high level, Councilman Banks, is when you see a crew over here and they are not over here, you cannot assume that what this crew is doing is what the problem in this hole is. I mean, these guys over here could be doing a completely different trade than what is required over here. So a lot of what we have in Mid-City Group A is a good example of this. The contractor learned a lesson in digging a bunch of holes, sending one trade out to do all that trades work in all of those holes, and then waiting for the next trade to come in. You follow me? The water guys are there, they get all the water done, and then the drainage guys come in. What we've tightened up in Mid-City Group B, Councilman Jeruso and Councilman Brissett, you'll see this, is they're gonna dig fewer holes, keep the trades focused on one lengthier hole, because we've added scope to go from, you know, this PMOI to something different. And then that trade is done more quickly in a more isolated area. But Randy, please elaborate if you'd like. And Councilman Banks, I'm very familiar with the Pleasant Street situation right now. There are some variables there, and David, if you want to chime in on that at all, feel free to. But I do want to give you your answer, Councilman Banks.
And Ramsey, you touched on it. And again, and again, I'm not a street engineer, so forgive me, but if you fixed one longer one and got that one finished,
yes,
as opposed to digging 5 smaller ones, people can see progress. The public would have a comfort level that stuff's happening. Whereas if you got 5 holes dug, and even though you might have 5 crews, the progress is not happening, so there's no finality to it. They're not finished. But if you put all those crews on one long hole, you may get finished with that. And again, I think we would go a long way in giving the public a comfort level, because now you see Pleasant Street done, and then we come back and do St. Thomas, then we come back and do Harmony, then we come back and do all the rest of them, but you do them in increments and finish one as opposed to starting up. And again, if I'm not an engineer, so if that is Pollyanna or naive, I accept that, but just as a rational, logical person, it seems a better path to me to get something finished so you can show people that it's finished before we go on to something else and have 10 dug up at the same time. And that's.
And just to, I don't want to belabor this, but Councilman Banks, you are right. We agree, and we are we are fixing that. I can assure you of that. The one thing that we really need to fix, and I've heard this in this council meeting a lot, and frankly, I hear it myself, is people are more understanding when they understand what the heck is going on. If that hole in front of your house has been there and you haven't seen guys out there, that's angry. That's going to make me angry. But if you understand that what they're doing is designing a replacement for your water line, which wasn't in the original project, and that work is going underway, I'm going to be like, oh, wait, you mean I'm going to get new water lines in my street? That's fantastic. I will be more patient. And what I can assure this council is we get that, and we need to be more clear about that. And Joe, you were right. The wave 3s forward, we're going to have way less of that. You follow me? We're going to have way less of those transitions from PMOI to an FRC, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to communicate it. We do need to communicate this, Councilman Banks, and I can assure you we are focused on that.
I would like to add that we are working with Entergy as well in the Irish Channel, and so they are doing work ahead of us, and we are being attentive to making sure we are working right behind them. But we do have a good amount of progress with utilities happening and trying to keep up with that. And then we can't have all trades working on top of each other. Entergy has to do their stuff first before we come in and do our scope of work. Sometimes we have to isolate water and sewer as well. So as Ramsey was saying, different crews do different things on these streets in order to layer it up and give us a full infrastructure below and street on top. I'd also like to mention that in the waves 1 and 2, going back to the same issue, that when we have full reconstruct in a linear fashion going down one street, it is easier to synchronize that work and move as a train moving forward. It's harder when we're doing patch mill and overlay and we've got that buckshot happening, and we might uncover some issues on this block, and then to keep the project moving while we're assessing the issues and getting, if designs needed, design, etc., moving on and having those crews continue so that we're not holding up the entire project. And that's some of the examples of how we've ended up with more holes. But with these full reconstructs, we're not going to see that.
And again, I get it, but I think that we would do a lot to lower the level of heartburn by communicating that much clearer and much more frequently to the people who are impacted. And again, I don't think one single resident is going to be upset that we started to fix this hole and then found out you needed a new water line and they're going to be mad because we're giving them a new water line. I think that everybody's going to applaud that. We just need to be far more intentional on making sure that they know that. And if we get to that point, I think much of the heartburn and ire will go away. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Councilmember Banks. I think I saw Councilmember Palmer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Real quick, so just to kind of recap, I just want to be clear. This first group is where we're seeing a lot of flux and continuation. The next groups, we're not going to see it to this extent. Is that a correct way of summing this part up?
Councilwoman Palmer, I'm a big believer in under promising and over delivering, but my short answer to your question is yes, but we also have about $800 million more. So I'm not going to assure you that there will be no problems. I mean, there will be problems, and we are positioning, we're at 15% right now, and we're learning all this stuff with the worst, not worst design, because that's important, the worst scoped projects we possibly have. And then one thing to remember about joint infrastructure, and this is important, is you may have one project that's here and one project that's here, and they're different contractors. And then that like neighbor in the middle is like, why is it going on here but dead over here? And it's an important distinction. But yes, Councilwoman, yes, my short answer is yes.
Okay, and sometimes I think too, if we could kind of rethink the communication, like the 311 process, and I know it's also in the work, to call 311. That's like a one-way communication. I feel like there's never any follow-up from 311 back to the constituent, right? And it's technically not 311's responsibility, right? It would be going to the department heads or the departments and then follow up. There needs to be a better way of a reciprocal relationship with constituents, because I just don't think it's there. And it's not just for y'all. I think it's just in general. We're seeing that a lot with 311, right? And then, I had a wonderful meeting, and I just want to thank you so much for showing the engineers at the beginning of this presentation, because they do such a great job. I don't think people realize not just the amount of sacrifices they make and the hard work they do, but compensation in the public sector versus the private sector is totally different. And so I totally acknowledge that, and I thank them for their work. And we were on a call with Jennifer Ruley and a few other folks the other day talking about the bike lanes, which we're all so excited about. But there's communication issues there too. And we were talking about, is there any way that we could actually use the NOLA Ready texting app for some of this, right? Because you can almost geo-target certain areas. And if we could even do that along the way, that's almost like a proactive thing, where like an entire neighborhood could get, a text that says, hey, these streets are under delay because of this. Another update next week, or something along those lines. And this city has done such a phenomenal job with the NOLA Ready texting system. I mean, what do we have? Almost half the city is on that right now. I mean, just some kind of crazy number. This could be a really good way also to try to communicate with folks, because that, I agree with everything y'all are saying and my colleagues. That's where we get all the angst, is when we get emails that say there's no timeline is available at this time. That puts us at another disadvantage to tell the constituent what's happening. So those are two recommendations I have. We do have to figure out a better reciprocal situation using 311 in its entirety. And maybe that's a separate conversation that I need to have with Terrell and all the different departments or with the city. But then I do think we can use NOLA Ready text in some way, shape, or form for notification.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Councilmember Brissette.
Thank you, Chairman Geruso. Ramsey, if you could take this, how are you all communicating with residents in the construction zone, specifically our elderly residents, as you have panels of a street or asphalt that is dug up, and individuals, elderly residents attempting to they're basically locked into their driveways. I know some people may have to park at the corners of their street, but in some instances, you have construction at the boundaries of each corner of the block. You know, front, you know, fronts of the square, side, east, west, north. So what are y'all doing to properly inform them on the front end how to access exit and entry?
Councilmember Girousso, if I may, if I could maybe talk through some of what we've got on the
Hey,
slide.
Sarah.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, please, Sarah. Thank you.
Yeah, just to sort of talk with you about this, because I think, you know, the road work NOLA office was created in particular so that we'd have that sort of reciprocal communication with residents, you know, during this most critical time, you know, before construction and during construction. So I just want to, you know, talk with you about some of the changes that we're making in our office so that we can meet the needs of having, you know, that are coming from having more than 60 projects in construction and impacted residents in all of those areas. So I just want to provide you an update on some of what we're doing, some of the things that we're, you know, moving toward adding in our office. We talked about the pre-construction community meetings. You know, these are one of the most important things that we do because it's, you know, connecting with residents a couple of weeks before a construction project starts. We've been doing those obviously virtually for the last year, and that's been actually an advantage because we're finding that, you know, we have a lot better participation, you know, 40 or 50 people versus maybe 10 or 12, you know, when we were doing them in person. So this, you know, the pre-construction meetings are the first opportunity for our project team with the, you know, construction managers, the contractor, everybody to, you know, get a chance to talk with residents in the community. Before we have those meetings, just so you all know, our typical way of notifying people about that, we have a number of different ways. We send out postcards, and we send those postcards out to the people in the impacted blocks. And then we try to go 2 blocks beyond that because we know that people are going to be impacted by, you know, construction materials and trucks moving in and around the sites that we're working. We also, you know, we may send out a press release about that. We post them on NOLA.gov. We post them on social media. So we really try to use an array of different ways to notify people that these projects are coming. We're also working alongside the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Engagement so that they can connect with neighborhood leaders. And we're making sure that you all, council members and your offices are notified so that you can also let people know about those. And I would say just in general, you know, we're definitely adjusting our messaging, you know, in those meetings based on what we've learned so far and going through, you know, all of these projects that we've completed. So, you know, as an example, letting residents know upfront that, hey, you know, there may be additional scope added to the project and that could potentially make the duration longer. As we've said, if people know about this upfront, it's a little easier to handle when it actually happens. We talked a little bit about, I mentioned neighborhood canvassing. You know, this is one of the most important ways that we communicate with people. Things are constantly changing during construction. So we've found that, you know, using the flyers is one of the best ways, one of the best methods to reach people. This is how we tell them that, you know, Councilmember Brissette, you just mentioned that, you know, elderly people during construction, if their entire road is closed, how are we letting them know? It's usually by way of a flyer. And we're putting those out ahead of the road being blocked off so that they know and can anticipate and make the necessary adjustments. We're also notifying people with flyers ahead of like a water service interruption. These are happening as we're doing more and more water line work. This happens, you know, pretty frequently. And there are 2 different types of service interruptions. There's, we notify people if there's a test closure, and that's done basically, you know, to determine how many people are going to be impacted during a full closure. Test closures typically last a couple of hours. When we put our notices out, we generally give people a 4-hour window just to kind of give worst case scenario. And we put those out 24 hours ahead of that happening. And again, these are planned things that we can get notices out ahead of time. For a full closure, that usually we put the notices out about 48 hours ahead of time. Those typically take 4 hours, but we tell people it's going to take 8 hours just to give them, again, the worst case scenario. And I wanted to mention that because I know we're getting a lot of questions, concerns, and challenges that people having with water service interruptions. There are times during construction when, there may be a service interruption that happens as a result of damage during construction. Those are the things that we can't get notices out ahead of time. When that happens, you'll have the contractor, sewage and water board, actually knocking on doors in that area. And if we're talking about, a pretty large area that's impacted, we'll also put that information out, on social media on Nextdoor, just to try to reach as many people as possible. Anytime we have a water service interruption, we're also, putting that out on Nextdoor as well, because we can, target and get down to the neighborhood level. I actually had a conversation specifically with Laura Mellon this morning to talk about the text messaging. I think it's a great direction that we can think about going in. We would have the capacity to also, get down to the neighborhood level. I think it's something that Sewage and Water Board is also looking into with Everbridge. And in that case, I think they can already use the information that they've collected from the customers, like phone numbers, to get information out. So, I mean, these are certainly things that we are exploring as more and more projects go into construction. Just quickly, so the Roadwork NOLA website, this is a great resource, but it also needs to evolve as the program is evolving. So what you see on the screen is just a mock-up of some of the things that we would like to change, because we recognize we've got to be more responsive to our residents with our resources. So we are in the planning stages of doing a revamp to the website. I think the needs now are very different from the needs that we had when we first launched the site. So I'll just talk very briefly about some of the things that we're exploring. And I will mention that we do look at the data, meaning like how people navigate and use the website on a monthly basis. So, we're going to spend time updating pages that we know are useful to people and that people are actually navigating to. So one of the things, we talk about the fact we need to demonstrate progress in everything that we do. And when you go to the website, there is no layer that actually shows completed projects. So that's something that we're working on, and one of the changes I think that you'll see in the very near future. So you'll be able to go to the homepage and see a layer for completed projects and click on it, and then it'll actually fill in. So, I mean, I think that's something that we'll probably have in the next couple of weeks. We don't have a search feature on the Roadwork NOLA website, and that's something that that we should have. That's something that we want to be very prominent. You can see that in the mock-up, just as it will help people to be able to more easily navigate the site. An action center, as you see, that's sort of the row of orange buttons with those icons. That's something that will give people easy access to the pages that they use most frequently on the website. We're also looking to create a construction by the numbers that just sort of gives people with one click, a brief overview, number of projects in construction, number completed, the amount of, what is the value of all of that work, just the things that we're getting, questions about most frequently. So those are some of the things that we're looking at in terms of our website overhaul. And then quickly, you all know we've got our dedicated construction hotline, which is 504-658-ROAD, and our email, roadwork@nola.gov. These are great tools. I want to give you all a sense, though, that we are, in addition to all of the questions and concerns that come in from council offices, we're probably managing between the hotline and email 300 to 400 cases a month. So it is significant, not surprising with the number of projects increasing, but it is possible when, I was just going to say, it is possible when people call, you may not get a live person. So I really want to encourage people to leave a message. We will get back to you within 24 hours. That is the commitment that we have had. But I just want to make people aware of that. It's not that we are there. We are definitely, busy and assisting other people who are calling, but just know that we will get back to you within 24 hours. I see that maybe there's some questions.
Yeah, I just want to say, I appreciate the website idea, because I do think you and I had talked about this in preparation for this meeting, that it's needed, and Ramsey sort of was articulating this point. You can also be in a certain area, and I've had a lot of people say, well, I don't see any street work happening. and there may be 4 projects that are maybe, you know, half a mile or a quarter mile from where you live, but just because it's not on your street, you don't see it. And so I think there needs to be an elevation of that. You know, look, I want the district council members in particular to chime in, and obviously the at-larges too, but the one thing I'm not really seeing on here is sort of what the in-person communication looks like. And I don't know, Sarah and Ramsey and Randy, if the best way to do this is to ask each neighborhood association, can we have a single point of contact who is either your board chair or they're the committee head of whatever, and that way information also flows to them. Because I feel like, you know, obviously social media is a good thing. The monthly construction letter has been good. But I also think if you can have a person who's a part of the neighborhood who can say, all right, it's their responsibility to channel out the information, and I think name and face makes a big difference. But I'm curious what my colleagues think about that too. Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you. So I'm actually kind of highly sensitive to their staff time and the administrative time in dealing with this. And Sarah, maybe you can elaborate on this, but you know, I appreciate that we're all under crunch when it comes to our team and our staffing. Does it even make sense, and have y'all thought about the communication really shouldn't be in your department? I mean, you obviously have to be very intrinsically linked to it, but almost have a communications firm that basically does it, or somebody in the office that all they do is communication, so that, you know, Sarah, I'm not contacting you. That to me is not helpful to you with what you're too valuable for that, right? And same with you, Ramsey. It's like, to me, I feel like if we almost have somebody who that's their core competency is communications, and that's where, you know, they try to create the strategies and putting out the information and ensuring that all these 300 people every month are responded to one way or another.
So just, I don't want to spend too much time talking about it, but just in terms of the makeup of the roadwork NOLA office, and it essentially is the communications arm for Public Works. So we have outreach specialists that are assigned to every one of the projects that's, you know, in construction or coming through bid and award. And so their responsibility, in addition to, you know, preparing for the pre-construction meetings, you know, staying in touch with the project team, I mean, they're the ones that are managing all of these inquiries that come in. So they spend a lot of time in the field, making sure that they understand, you know, the issues that are coming up, particularly if there are issues that are, you know, we're hearing from a lot of residents. I mean, they are the people that are handling all of this. It's just, it is a lot, you know, as we have so many projects in construction. So just to give you some perspective, I would say on average, each of the outreach specialists is probably managing, you know, 15 to 20 projects.
And so how many, do we need more specialists? I mean, what's the solution, right? And we're trying to find the solution to make it better, right? And then also to the point, I know y'all don't want to staff up if we're anticipating the other projects will go more smoothly, but we don't know. So what would be, I mean, what would y'all propose the solution would be?
Certainly, you want,
Yeah, let me
hold on.
Can you hear me there, Councilwoman?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. So, yeah, so Sarah and I are in the same room, so we have to rotate who does the audio whenever one of us starts talking. So to answer your question, Councilwoman, I think in part it is the huge amount of work that happened quickly. And so there's the projects that these elements need to be, you know, better managed. And I think we're talking about like not too many holes at one time, et cetera. And then the nature of wave 1 and 2, and then the communications of it. And if we need to hire more folks in Sarah's shop, we will do that. I mean, that is not something, I do know she has 2 big vacancies right now, which is, we've seen that in government, frankly. We have a lot of people.
So is the vacancy because of the furloughs and all of that, or is the vacancy because you can't find qualified applicants for the jobs?
Well, I'm going to speak high level because I don't want to speak about those 2 individual positions. We have lost people. Let me put it that way. We have lost important, relevant folks due to furloughs, pay cuts, and frankly, the last 12 to 15 months of grind. We have incredible people who are with us. And this is not a staffing problem, Councilwoman. I think it's a huge amount of work went out and we're trying to communicate it more effectively. But I have the confidence we're going to get that done. I mean, they had 40 in-person meetings alone, in the last 8 months. Not an in-person is like what we're doing right now, obviously not sitting in a room in the way we normally do it, on each one of these projects. And the neighborhood engagement office and the mayor's office is part and parcel of that. And I think your staffs are as well. I mean, we always tell your staffs about them. But, we end up having 5 people staff a meeting that 4 residents show up at, and it's like you're outgunned in the virtual meeting by staff versus the people who actually want to participate. I think part of it is there may be a divide in participating in a virtual meeting for some of those elderly folks that Councilman Brissett brought up. This is our nature of a pandemic where this method right now of our communication is entirely digital. And thank God that Sarah's team and Nikki Clay are out there knocking on doors, dropping flyers off. I mean, that is and Sarah said it, that's the most effective way to communicate with our folks. But if we need more people on this, Councilwoman, we are on it. And we can do that. And thankfully, because of the federal money, I can pay for that staff using this FEMA money. So it isn't, but, anyway, Councilwoman, I don't know if that answers your question precisely, but we have the resources, I think, to solve this. And Sarah, please step in and I'll lower my.
We want to do whatever we need to do to help as the appropriating body. I think if it's not a quantitative issue, what we've heard repeatedly is we want the qualitative part. Everybody does solved, right? And I think it's not only the amount of communication that goes out, it's also when a resident has a question that it's being answered. Not only, I guess, A, being answered, but also B, that there's follow-up or adherence to. Councilmember Moreno, I know you had a question. And to my colleagues, because of the way the screen is set up, I can't see everybody all the time. So please don't hesitate to jump in if I don't see you raise your hand. Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you, Councilmember DeRusso. So Ramsey, on the communication piece, I mean, it really seems like you all are coming together with a plan and really, are willing to add additional staff if needed and resources, which I think is great. But I wanted to get back to the actual work on the street. For all the work that's out there, Ramsey, do you think that the contractors who've been hired have enough manpower to get the job done really quickly? Like, is there a manpower issue at all? Is that causing any delays?
I think, Councilwoman, there's a couple things. One, that we have some contractors that are doing phenomenally well. I mean, and frankly, like we had, I think Councilman Brissett, it may have been in your district. We had to postpone a ribbon cutting at Fillmore Group something this morning for this hearing. But you don't hear, yeah, Fillmore Group B. Thank you, Jared. But like you don't hear when the job goes really well. So they're doing really well. We have a few better problems, and we have to use our mechanisms, which are contracts, payments, management, to make them do a better job. It is when they bid on a job, Councilwoman, they're bidding on the job. They know exactly what the scope is. And if we add scope, we have to pay for it. I mean, and they have to bid on it. So the manpower problem, I want to be, the government owns that. We are paying them to solve their means and methods within their contract. I think there's a couple things that occurred. One is a pandemic, which, labor went everywhere. You know what I mean? Like labor dispersed, they moved, they didn't do things. I think that contributes to it. Materials prices, if anybody has tried to renovate their home in the last 4 months on this phone call, you will see it. Materials prices have gone whatever that word is, high. I think that is an impact. And then I think from the public perspective, David Schulman will tell you that the Sewage and Water Board had to be very strategic about interventions in water lines. So you may have seen a hole longer for a long time because we couldn't do, this was in Councilwoman Wynn's district in particular. Vanderkloot is an example of this. We had to stop doing work because we didn't want to turn the water off to people's homes while a pandemic is going on. That was the only thing we had left on a project. I don't want to say it's one thing, Councilwoman, versus another. I think it's a melange of things, and we're frankly learning from a lot of them. And the thing that we can focus on fixing is both our communications with the public is an important one, but the contract language, which I know you're very keyed up on, and we love the fact that you were keyed up on it. And then ensuring that those folks know we are on top of them, those folks being the PMs, et cetera. And we're really putting that work on afterburner to do that.
Yeah, I really appreciate working with you and Mr. Montano on contractor accountability, because I do think that that is important, and potentially could be an issue as far as getting some of the jobs done in a timely manner. The other question I had too, Ramsey, was about, okay, so one of the other issues about why some jobs are delayed, as you had mentioned, is that an additional problem is found. When that happens and work has to be stopped, how much longer does it usually take for work to begin again? Because that's where it seems that there's maybe days into weeks where I'm hearing where possible delays occur. And of course, then we get individuals who are really upset, because in some of these projects, as people can't even get into their driveways and don't have use of their driveways. So what does that look like when, and I know we've talked about the communication piece to let people know that there's an issue, but what is the usual timeline that when there is a big problem determined that, work will now begin again?
So I always want to give you a very clear answer, Councilwoman. But on this one, it depends on the problem. It really does. Water to people's homes is something that we got to make sure that's right. You hit a lead line, and David's on the phone. He can talk all you want about that. That is an intervention we have to solve, right? Drainage is a little bit less. That's a little more blocking and tackling, but water and then sewerage, because of the Sewage and Water Board consent decree and the SERP program, if we're not, and frankly, we are working really integrated together to meet the demands of the consent decree while replacing all of these lines that are joint infrastructure projects, those will take a long time. And Randy mentioned EHP, which I know you guys know all about. We hired the archaeologist, preservation, that stuff is moving. But when we see something on a job site, we have to do an EHP review because the feds are paying for it. This is why I am so excited about bond money, because bond money, I can intervene and move quicker, but bond money is also the last dollar you ever want to spend. If I can get out of the federal government, I want to spend that first. So EHP is one thing. Tactical, what is happening in the street that needs to be solved. And then you mentioned earlier, Councilwoman, change orders, which a change order is simply, we call it a plan amendment, is when they find one of these things and then they have to largely fix it. So then we have to go through the accountability of FEMA. Will you pay for this? GOSEP, here's our timeline need for cash. Sewage and Water Board, PM, please review it and sign. DPW, PM, please review it and sign. So that's a high level explanation, but Randy and David, I don't know if you guys want to add anything on that to give the councilman maybe 2 months for this, 3 months for that. And I don't know that you can.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else is weighing in, but I get it, Ramsey. I just wanted you to kind of explain, some of the major hoops that then have to occur that you all have to go through when there is a major issue with these JIRR projects, because they are federal money projects. And once again, I know you're already working on the communication piece, and that just goes back to the communication piece, that when these big problems are found, that everything is done to alert neighbors so that they truly understand. And look, the people of New Orleans are used to dealing with a lot of stuff, And, you know, it's always good to just tell them the truth and let them know, I hate to tell you this, but it's likely going to be another 2 months or another 3 months before your street is, you know, anywhere back to normal. Like, just let them know, because this whole thing of where they're anticipating work to happen and maybe in 2 weeks something will be completed, but there's no way that that'll happen. That's where people get upset, because they're thinking that, you know, things are going to get done quickly and they're not. But if you're just, you know, out there and honest, and it's, I hate to tell you this, but the truth is it's going to be weeks to months before your street is back to normal, then I think the better off we'll all be. So thank you. You all are working hard, and I do appreciate it. And so look forward to continuing to work on this. And Ramsey, I know I've got a meeting with you later today, and Gilbert, as we continue to work on the contractor piece. So I'll be talking to you all then.
And Councilmember Moreno, if I could just say, you know, when we do, sometimes it does take a few days, you know, to understand exactly what an issue is and how long it may take to address that issue. So as long as it's not an emergency, it may take us a week or so for us to sort of gather that information, make sure that we're giving people the best explanation that we can. And people always want timeframes. If an issue happened, we hear from the project team, okay, we've got to stop work. If we start to communicate that with residents, the first thing they're going to ask us is, how long is it going to be? And sometimes it takes some time for them to sort of peel back the layers, understand exactly what the issue is. And we always want to make sure that we give people the best explanation and our best, you know, estimation of the time it's going to take to address the issue. So I just want to make sure that people understand sometimes it does take a little bit of time to get there.
And I think that then you just let people know that we're in the assessment process right now. We can't give you a timeline because we're in the assessment timeline or process. But as soon as we're done, we're going to be communicating with you and giving you that possible timeline.
Joe?
Yeah, hang on 1 second. Because I know Councilmember Glapion wants to jump in, Councilmember Banks. And the other thing I think we need to just emphasize is, if you tell people it's going to be a month, then it needs to be a month. And if it's not a month, then there needs to be an explanation. And I'm not going to go chapter and verse into the examples, but I think that's the other major piece of all of this that really concerns everyone, is that we understand it takes time to get the communication. We understand it takes time to identify the problem. But if DPW, Sewage and Water Board, the contractor, says we need 38 days to correct this problem, and in fact it's going to take 65 days, then I think everybody needs to know that as quickly as possible too. Right? All right, Councilmember Glapion, and then Councilmember Banks will come back to you.
I have it's a procedural question, kind of related to Council President Moreno's question. If there's a project going on that includes several streets, say A, B, C, and D, and then you find that problem that was not in the original scope that has to be addressed, drainage or whatever, does that stop work on every other street in that project when that one particular problem is found? Or does the work on the other streets continue? Tell me procedurally, how does that work?
So we continue to move and we continue to work because we have project deadlines unless something is on the critical path. And typically, sometimes that could happen towards the end, but that's why you're seeing so many work sites in these wave 1 and wave 2, as we're identifying issues, assessing it. If there's design required, again, each one of these issues could be completely different from the other. And it depends on the problem. It depends on the contractor. It depends on the consultant, the path forward, the CM, and the weather. And we're getting into storm season. You know, some of the stuff requires dry holes, and the contractors will pump water out. Sometimes the dirt needs to be dry. So that's it in a nutshell, but we continue to move forward to meet those deadlines and to produce, you know, better infrastructure for the city of New Orleans.
Thank you. Councilmember Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in a couple of logistical questions. Irish Channel, it's been 2 months since anything's happened. So what is the actual window between doing the assessment of how long it's going to take to figure out what needs to happen, and you're letting the residents know that we're going to start work again. How big a window needs to happen after the assessment is completed before the residents know a new start date?
Are you talking specifically about, oh, sorry.
I'm talking, well, right now, I mean, in general, but I'm specifically talking about Irish Channel because it's been 2 months since anything has happened on those streets that I'm talking about, Pleasant and St. Thomas and those folks. So, again, I don't think that the folks would be opposed to getting the improvements done if there was some finality as to when they can expect it to be done. So they've been shut down for months and still have no idea when it's going to happen. And I get it that you have to do the further assessment after you discovered a bigger problem. I get all of that, but how big is that window after the assessment is complete to when work is actually going to start? But before the work actually starts, when do you let the residents know that they can look for work to start on the 4th of November, 2007, or whatever it is? How big a window is that?
So I'm trying to get some information specifically about 6th and Pleasant, but generally speaking, I mean, they should be notified right away that we're, taking a pause to try to figure out what kind of additional work's happening. And that will let them know, once we understand the added scope. I'm trying to get some specific information about those streets, but it should be fairly immediate. There is work continuing on that project, just so you know, on the East Riverside project. But give me a moment, and I'll hopefully get back to you on those 2 streets.
And then when you get to the actual flyer, one of the other complaints that we've received is that the flyers tend to be vague and in general. So basically, I mean, I get it that you can't be as specific as in some other instances, but how specific can you get to give folks a realistic timeline that they can expect it to happen in 2 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever? How much detail do you actually give them so they can know what they're facing?
Yeah, in general, I mean, when we put out notices that says work's starting on your block, we don't give them a specific day because obviously things change hour to hour, day to day on construction sites. So we may say, work's going to be starting in your area in the next couple of weeks. We try to be general. Sometimes that doesn't happen and then we have to reflyer. It's difficult to be more specific than saying, work's going to be starting on your block in the next couple of weeks and actually meet that.
And then when you run into one of these delays, when you're digging up Blue Street and you find that there's a water line that needs to be replaced, so it's going to take an extra amount of time to fix it, is it possible to install temporary driveways so folks can at least get access to their houses while no work is going on? Because what we have now is it's shut down and people are inconvenienced, but nothing's happening. So is it possible to at least give folks access to their properties while this interim period of review and assessment and renoticing and all that? Can we do that?
That should absolutely be happening. I mean, people should not be without their driveway access for more than 2 weeks at a time before some sort of temporary measure is put into place. We know that has happened, not just in your district, but throughout the city, and let us know if that's happening so that we can address it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Banks. All right. So I have one more question sort of related to communication, and I'm thinking this is a good point. I think we've all pretty much said the same things now. Is Ramsey, I think you made the good point that we don't want to have to spend bond money unless necessary, but there are points where it is necessary or for whatever reason, it just can't be included in the FEMA work or it's just outside the scope. Y'all have worked with our office, I'm sure the other district offices as well, as saying we're going to take care of this area next to Mardi Gras Group A with bond money. Is that going to be reflected on a map too? Because I really feel like it will help everybody to make sure that if there's a commitment to installing drainage in the 1000 block of Arabella and the 900 block, and there's Palm Air that's outside of the FEMA project, but they're going to get the bond money to repair their streets, how that's shown on a map too.
we're discussing that. Sorry, Councilman.
It's all right. It's all right.
I one of these days we'll be in the chambers. Yes, the answer to that is let's figure that one out. I will say, when you refer to the bond money, some of that is like still in flux. So like dedicating a GIS team to redoing all those maps right now is one thing where I'm a little bit, I'd rather walk in and show Joe what's happening, but I know Joe doesn't want to have to answer everybody's question. He'd rather say, go to Roadwork NOLA. But yes, we'll make that a thing. Absolutely. And truth be told, the bond money, we won't get until this summer. So it's like, I'm a big, I want my eggs in the basket before I start telling people what's about to happen. That's all.
And Ramsey, I know in fairness too, we have a lot of decisions to make, right? I mean, it's in a way now, you have the FEMA spending that needs to happen, and we have the bond money that will not be available to June or July. You have ARP money. There's the potential for the infrastructure money. There are a lot of decisions that have to be made. And I think you've made the good point that if the federal government is spending for certain infrastructure, whatever that may be, right? It could be streets, it could be bridges, it could be broadband, that we shouldn't be spending city funds if we either know or have a strong suspicion that there's going to be other sources to take care of that. So, all right. Well, I appreciate this. What I'm going to do is read the comments. I have 14 on this first issue before moving into the catch basins. Council Member Banks's constituents are first in line in the order that we got them, and I'll just read them. And then I guess, Paul, there may be a couple that are close to 2 minutes. Will you just keep a clock, please, if you don't mind? The first one is from Lena Giangrosso. As a resident of the Irish Channel, I will simply say there has to be a better, more efficient, less intrusive way to handle the street and sub-street repairs. Digging up every street at once and then letting them all sit while they await repairs that are not also being done all at once serves only to disrupt traffic patterns, create dangerous streets, potentially cause accidents and vehicle damage. I understand needing to plan ahead so the next street is ready when the work on one is complete, but every street at once is simply poorly planned and executed. And now even more digging is occurring, literally half the entire first block of Chippewa off of Louisiana, when none of the other repairs have been completed or holes filled. Next comment is from Lawrence Godfried. I'm concerned with the pace of street and sidewalk repair in the Irish Channel. An enormous number of holes, trenches have been made on the streets and sidewalks. It seems if more are created every day. If there is a little sign of repaving or filling them, and after a couple of months. It's particularly bad on First Street where I live. It's become difficult and dangerous to drive down the street or walk the dog. I know it is causing hardships for many local businesses as well. And I'm not going to reread the comments that I've already read. Krista Colson is the next comment. First, thanks to Councilmember Banks and his team for including this issue on the agenda today. My comments are as follows. First, I understand that part of the delays in getting back to finishing the job is that a drainage plan was requested. I'd love to know more about why the drainage was an afterthought. They dug up these seemingly random place sections and then decided they needed more drainage info. The street infrastructure and drainage have been priorities since Katrina, so it's hard for me to grasp why this is not addressed before digging. I would bet a good amount of money that there are at least half a dozen local drainage plans of some sort. Second, if the CNO knew that there are multiple infrastructure needs that need to be addressed in these perfectly random place squares, then why would they not coordinate with the relevant departments and contractors to schedule the work to happen on a schedule that doesn't result in months of nothing happening in between? I get that delays will happen, but what we are seeing appears to be poor project management. Lastly, can we all agree that the Roadwork NOLA as a PR stunt? That site gives us nothing of value. It's pretty pictures and a bunch of words with no deadlines or clear scope of work for the various projects they list. So many times I've referred to the Roadwork NOLA maps only to find work happening where none are identified and vice versa. I'm all for progress and I could be patient, but please don't treat residents like idiots. We're asking for meaningful information that makes logical sense. The city does something that clearly shows a lack of planning and coordination. It's our job to hold the city administration accountable. Thanks for taking my comment. I hope you can help us make some sense of this mess. Next comment from Aaron Kidder. I live around the corner from a few of these man-made square street holes where large squares of concrete/cement have been removed and left indefinitely. Not only are there weeds and shrubbery growing in it by this point, it's been months, but my biggest concern is that its changing traffic patterns are causing more potholes to form. The streets of the Irish Channel were previously in poor repair. Someone put an 8-foot handmade traffic cone in the years-old sinkhole at Washington and Constance to make a point months ago, and the hole's still there. And by forcing cars to go around these giant cut squares in the street, more wear and tear is being placed on sections of street previously rarely used, and now more potholes are forming. I can no longer drive from Washington to 4th on Rousseau because with the newly formed potholes next to the big cut squares, there's no safe path for my car anymore. Please, please fix these holes. I can't say I have faith that when they're repaired, the potholes formed by driving around them will also be repaired, and that we basically eliminated any gains we've made. We deserve to be able to drive on and use the streets our tax dollars pay for. My neighbor can't use her driveway. This feels like creating a problem and needlessly forcing residents to shoulder the burden of inefficient planning. It's not fair. Fix it. The next comment is from Nika Highland. Work in front of my property began in February. The initial crew working on our street moved quickly and efficiently to remove damaged portions of the street. While the sections of road removed did not make logical sense to me, the work crew assured us that they would be completed with the 600 block in a month. For that reason, I did not complain or begrudge the fact that half the street in front of my driveway was now inaccessible and would have to find alternate parking. However, after 2 weeks on the site, the crew moved to the next block, demolishing even larger strips of road and never returned. Now, more than 2 months after work began, there are no road crews around, no one making any attempts to repair the damage they created, and I have lakefront property now as a result of the ditch they created directly in front of my home becoming a pond after every rain. I reached out to the Roadworks website and spoke to a representative there who informed me that a drainage study was underway and might be done in a few weeks, but couldn't say for sure. As we don't have any drainage assemblies, no catch basins, etc., on the 3-block stretch from Chop to Chippewa, I don't see what there is exactly to study. All I do see are streets that didn't flood prior to removal now becoming lakes around the neighborhood. All the excuses I've been given on delay of the work are nothing more than exactly that, excuses. It's time for the city representatives and local construction crews performing the work to fully coordinate and now expedite the process of repairs. If drainage studies are required, I see no reason these studies cannot be performed prior to the demolition of streets. It's the city's responsibility to monitor the crews that they hire to perform the work and provide some type of relief to the residents that have had to live in a live action version of the mousetrap for several months. Fix the infrastructure, fix the drainage, and fix the roads, but do it in a logical, well thought out, scheduled process. The next comment is from Mike Easley. Work began in October on the 7700 block of Birch in Carrollton. The surface of the street was completely broken up. A layer of river sand was put down over the holes and broken asphalt. It remains a complete mess, alternating between a dusty desert and a muddy bog. Work on the 7700 block of Jeanette Street, just one street over, was started much later and completed. Concrete surface, curbs, repair drains in fairly short order. The next block of Birch, 7800, was started later than the 7700 block and now has a paved asphalt surface, new corners, and driveways. As one drives around Carrollton, to the extent that it's possible to drive around Carrollton, one sees a sparse patchwork of street repair. The contractors for this project are moving at a glacial pace. The goal is to completely renew Carrollton Street. At this rate, it will take a decade or more. Why was the 7700 block of Jeanette selected for an expedited deluxe concrete engineering treatment, while the 7800 blocks of Birch and Green Streets got an apparently shoddy and unfinished job of asphalt paving? The 7700 block of Birch was just ripped up and forgotten. In fact, worse than forgotten, since it's used to store gravel, blocking a storm drain on one side of the street. On the other side, in the process of replacing a residential sewer line, the drainage culvert was destroyed and the hole filled. It was left to residents to dig the fill out and substitute a makeshift line. That's where a couple of those orange cones went. The riverside drainage was completely blocked, creating a long-standing lake every time it rains. The next comment is from Cynthia Maldonado. As a resident of LaPage, I'm disappointed with the lack of communication. From a no park notice to not having access to our driveways or street for an unknown amount of time. In addition to no information on where to park, access to the neighborhood changes from day to day. As a 65-year-old with some physical limitations, it's been unreasonably challenging for routine activities such as returning home with groceries that have to be carried for blocks, not even taking into consideration the missing sidewalk, leaving us with unsafe, uneven, obstacles-ridden, slippery, muddy surfaces to walk in. The next comment is from Marion. I only have a first name. I live at Birch and Adams in the central Carrollton neighborhood across from Carrollton Cemetery. My comment is about the deplorable condition of the streets. There's nothing novel about this topic, either here or most places in the country. I just wish to point out lately it's been unusually strange in that maybe 10 square blocks from Carrollton to Broadway and Spruce to Jeanette. In seemingly random fashion, single blocks are torn up and left in various states of partial repair. Some previously paved blocks are now completely gravel and roller coaster-like in their altitude shifts. Other blocks are almost complete. The last 10% of the work seems to take months. Some corners have 4 new curb cuts, but old sunken streets. Many blocks remain partially blocked. Some streets are paved on one side only. The obstacles seem to change daily. Meanwhile, every morning, about 5 large dump trucks of full dirt rumble by my house to who knows where. My own street has not been improved in the 2 decades I've lived here, but compared to the neighboring streets, I suppose I'm grateful for the multi-layered patchwork and the small lumpy asphalt hill, which scrapes my undercarriage each time I leave my house. At least I have a paved road. My neighbor no longer parks in his own block due to damage to his car from dust, gravel, and dirt. Regarding drainage, we have no curbs nor catchment basins on either side of the 7,500 and 7,600 blocks of Birch, nor the 1,500 to 1,600 blocks of Adams, nor many other blocks. There used to be a ditch surrounding the cemetery which provides some drainage into culverts, but those have been long filled, previously randomly, and then mysteriously some dump trucks completely filled them up about a month ago. Every time it rains, there's a small lake across from my house on the cemetery side, and deep water on my side to get out. But lately, the lake almost covers the entire street, takes up about half a day or longer to drain. It would be nice, it would be quite helpful to have curbs, catchment basins, and paved streets. It would be nice to know if there's a plan.
That's 2 minutes.
Thanks. Thank you. Next comment is from Stephen Jones. First off, I welcome the investment in infrastructure and appreciate the city's focus on the improvements to Faubourg St. John. It's apparent, however, the city is relying on its contractors and subcontractors for communication with neighbors, and this lack of system is inadequate. There was a single neighborhood meeting covering the entire district's projects in late 2020 or early 2021, and other than blanket notices, which have been mostly incorrect about construction start dates and water pressure fluctuations, the neighbors on LaPage Street have had to beg for more information. I've personally sent dozens of emails to city officials, made several calls to contractors, and spent considerable time bugging hardworking contractors for any information. Most of these inquiries have been met with incomplete or misguided responses. Communication with neighbors is a component of the city contracts, and the contractors should be held to task. We were originally told this project was 6 to 8 weeks, only to find out 10 weeks in that the new road overlay subcontractor has 6 to 8 additional weeks to complete their phase. We recognize that there will be inconveniences from construction and can handle them if we plan for them. However, not all disruptions are the same. Neighbors should be notified when the nature of the interference will change so we can adjust accordingly. For months, we've not had street parking and are generally fine with that. 2 weeks ago, contractors removed access to our driveways without prior notice, leaving several cars trapped in their driveways. To be clear, losing access to our driveways is an understandable inconvenience for a welcome street improvement. And given that we live in a walkable neighborhood, I appreciate the nudge. The lack of foresight noticed by the city, its prime and subcontractors have left the neighbors in a lurch. After this oversight was identified, the lack of urgency of the city and its contractors has made it worse. Surely there is a Gantt chart someone's filed for this project that we can plan our days accordingly. Next comment is from Kay Lewis, and looks like the top part of it got cut off, so I'll read the sentence fragment I have first and then go from there. About the year plus time frame laid out to complete the work, was gratified to see some improvement coming to the streets. As well, the signs, the holes indicated that they would be filled by March 31. I took that to mean that the project was going to be done in pieces over the year plus, and that we weren't looking at over a year of zigzagging up and down the street. I wasn't too concerned if more of these giant holes began popping up throughout the channel because, again, according to the signage, they were supposed to be filled by March 31. Obviously, that was too optimistic. More giant holes have appeared throughout the channel and apparently beyond. Some of the holes appear to be deteriorating. The sides are crumbling where cars or whatever are nicking the sides, which means the holes will only get larger. Driving through the channel is an obstacle course. Anyone who has spent any time here knows that parking is a premium, and it's not unusual to see cars parked across from these holes, making the street impassable to through traffic. This is incredibly frustrating on its own. However, when you consider that there is an energy project, gas line work, and occasional sewage and water board repairs happening at the same time, it is almost impossible to get home on a direct route sometimes. On any given day, there will be earth movers, large trucks, dumpsters, and piles of sand or dirt dotting the streets. So there are days when I end up driving up and down, back and forth to find a route to my house because the various roads are blocked. Based on our new property assessment, our taxes are due to go up significantly. I'm fine paying taxes if I get something for them, but I'm mystified as to where our money goes. The school stops on the roads are abysmal. I've lived on both coasts and up north. We moved here in 2004. This is the only place I've lived where I plan my route based on the conditions of the actual street, and that is insane. I know exactly where to slow down on Washington Avenue between Broad and Claiborne to avoid damaging my suspension, and have long known to avoid the sinkhole at Constance in Washington. Thank you. Next comment is from T. McGuire. Due to the fact that people cannot access their driveways and have not been able to access them for over a month, will not have access for the foreseeable future, I request that Public Works create temporary driveway access by filling in the space with gravel. The next comment is from Taylor Matthews. My street, General Diaz, has been scheduled for road and drainage repairs since the fall of 2019 with nothing happening to date. The second half of my street has no storm drains, and all water from my streets and surrounding area flows into my and my neighbors' properties with nowhere to go. New drainage is imperative. The city's inability to maintain its infrastructure is unacceptable and embarrassing. Please provide an update on this dangerous project and let us know which parties should be accountable for the progress. Next comment is from Heather Heaton. The area in front of my house has been left a mess by the Broadmoor Street Improvement Project construction team. Every day is not only littered with drink bottles, chip bags, and other refuse, but routinely tools are left behind. It's a trip hazard. It could be attracting thieves to my property, and it's just plain rude. I understand that some people need to remain on site like large machinery or even bricks or lumber, but there's no excuse for the rest of these items. As of the time of writing, there's currently in front of my house a rotary drill attachment, an industrial broom, and a can of pink spray paint. I hid the spray paint overnight so as not to entice anyone to tag my house. And then the last comment on this topic is from Sam Schofield. I was extremely excited to see roadwork taking place in the Irish Channel several months ago. However, this was clearly a too good to be true fallacy, as massive pits were dug on every single road, all roads between Jackson, Louisiana, and the Irish Channel, and they have been untouched for months. Why tear up roads on every street if you weren't planning to immediately fix? These pits are causing so many issues: general driving, Irish Channel homeowners, reducing parking, weather, and general appearance. The same manpower that tore up these streets in a very quick time frame can easily repair these streets. Come on, this is ridiculous. All right, so that ends the public comments on the JIRR work. I think a theme has emerged, and I know DPW has provided us with some solutions in terms of language they're going to add to contracts, continued management, examining the waves they're in, and obviously we spent a lot of time on communication, and so that is helpful. I would also ask Paul, if you don't mind sending the comments to someone at DPW, maybe send them to Sarah, if that's all right, Sarah. I don't mean to deputize you, but you're always so good at being responsive to make sure that people know they're not just read. Yeah, Ramsey.
And if I can, I was going to thank you. I was going to ask you exactly for that.
Yeah.
And, you know, just Sarah and I, while we were listening to this, you know, just to the public, we get it. You know, this is an old city that there's a reason why this stuff has been untouched for 60, 70, 80 years, you know, and you dig in and you find it. We'll get there. The thing I would really want to stress is I think we need to either, Kristen, to your point, put more people in roadwork NOLA, do it. And we have a staff AUG contract. We just did an NTP on for helping Randy's team out to essentially give us more PMs, project controls, et cetera. We may do a bit of an augment and put some communications help in there as we're sort of hiring up some folks in roadwork NOLA, but I get the message, I really do. And, you know, I know some of the problems that I just heard, but, you know, I don't like being a government person who doesn't speak to hearing that. I think it's important that we hear it, and Joe, please get it to us so we can get some response there. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think Councilmember Palmer wants to weigh in before we close out this topic.
Yeah.
Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joe. Just real fast, Joe, and I'm sorry, but since I have all of you here, I just have like 3 constituent issues I could just follow up real quick on. On the last roadwork newsletter for West Bank Group B project, you listed out all the streets except Mercedes and Halsey was not listed. They're still waiting for the overlay. Remember, they've already been scraped. They're ready to go, and they haven't had the overlay yet. Do we have any update on those 2? If not, we can wait till.
Sorry, I'm going to look into those and I'll get back to you.
Thank you. And then also, y'all know about Berkeley in between, you know, Woodland and Sullen. So that was supposed to happen the second quarter of 2021. Now it went back on the roadwork site and pushed back to the second quarter of 2022. So there's a little insurrection down there happening. So if I could get some update on that, would be fantastic. And the last, these are like our top 3 District C issues. So it's Mercedes and Halsey, it's Berkeley in between Woodland and Sullen, and then the last one are the French Quarter sidewalks.
Okay. Yeah.
The work stopped there for several
Yes.
months now. And I think they were told that the contractor left to go work uptown, and there's no timeline now or no date for when it will resume.
So it's, I think it's been a couple of weeks, at least that's what I was told when I inquired about it. I will get you a date. I think it should be in the next couple of weeks that they'll be back, but I'll get you some specifics about where crews are going to go, because there are a few different corridors where they're working on sidewalks. But I'm actually working on an update on French Quarter infrastructure because, you know, we've got a lot of stuff going on.
Right, I know. Okay, that's really all I have. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Banks. Thank you, Councilmember Palmer.
And well, let me put some on the list too to get some updates. 500 South Scott and 200 South White. If I could get updates on where they are in the process.
Okay.
All righty, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you all very much. Now I'd like to move on to item number 4. Obviously, heavy rain has made us start thinking about hurricane preparation. And I know, you know, DPW is is getting prepared for all of this. So I wanted to take a minute before we got to June 1 to give the department an opportunity to talk about the work that it does to get ready, not only in terms of what's been cleaned, but also in terms of how they prepare when we get into the cone of uncertainty. So I'm not sure who's going to present on this, but we're welcoming this presentation.
Councilman, if I can just introduce the issues. Josh is going to cover catch basins, small lines, and sort of operations and hurricane preparedness. Randy is going to cover the protocol for all construction sites and how we communicate that. But I do want to say one short thing. I think it's an interesting stat, and I think you guys will appreciate this. In the month of April, we're only like halfway through. As of 2 days ago, we've had 9 inches of rain. It's probably around 11 or 12. The normal month of April at the midpoint, same day, is less than 2. I just want to point out that our number of flood reports are substantially down. Our inbound calls of flooding into 311 and our turnaround time of when those calls come in and how quickly the water dissipates are very fast. You are seeing progress. And we go through this and it's a little bit soul crushing in some ways to hear the sort of public comment, but there is some real progress. You're going to hear about it, but I cannot state that the coordination between infrastructure and emergency response and our government is really good. And this council, I just remember back to Councilwoman Moreno, when we were showing her that document with the coffee stain on it and how we manage catch basin teams. Like, we've done some really good work on this stuff. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to show it a little bit. Josh, you're here.
Yeah, Councilmember Banks.
Before you all go to the presentations, I want to publicly commend you for the work that has taken place. Now, I think for the first time in generations, there has been an intentional effort to help to improve the overall condition of the Sewage and Water Board, and the coordination between DPW and the Sewage and Water Board is phenomenal. And I don't think that enough credit is given to that. But by no means am I telling you that it's time to spike the ball, that we have finished and fixed all of the problems. But the reality of it is that there is real progress being made. Now, we have a very long way to go. And it's easy to throw bricks at the Sewage and Water Board and at the city when things go wrong. And I get it, because the frustration levels are real and justified. But the truth of the matter is, this system is in a lot better condition than we found it. And it is a lot better and closer to being fixed than what it has ever been in decades. And I think that the public may not be aware of that, but I think we probably need to do a better job at sharing that information. We are doing much, much, much better. But again, I want nobody to sit down here and pat us on the back yet, because we got a long way to go, but at least we're on the road. And the first issue that we had to do was acknowledge that there was a problem. The first thing that we had to do was own up to the fact that we had a dysfunctional way of doing business, and we addressed how we're doing business. So I'm excited that we have kept these flood crises to a minimum with all of that rain so far, but we got a long way to go, and hopefully we'll get to the point that these discussions will be ancient history. At some point, I hope to have the system where it doesn't break. I hope at some point we have a system that people don't have to think about it. We ain't there yet, but again, I commend you all, along with the group over at Sewage and Water Board, Gassan and his crew, and all of the others that sit at the table with coordinating. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Appreciate that. Yeah, Councilmember Palmer.
Yeah, I just want to put my voice in there and just say thank you for these back trucks and the clean out, because I got to tell you, I've lived in Algiers for 20 something years and I'd never seen them to the rate, and I'm serious, ever. And I see them in our neighborhoods now throughout Algiers and throughout the city. And I think that's huge. And so I just want to thank y'all for that. We absolutely see it. I don't want y'all to think, especially after public comment, that it's all negative, but it has been tremendous. You know, I think we all still wake up in the middle of the night when the rain's really heavy. And even today, and not hearing the flood accounts and things like that, it's amazing. And I hope the public understands that's because of that significant amount of work that y'all have done. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Josh, are you gonna lead us off, please?
Sure thing. So kind of want to go over the last couple of years and how we actually got to where we are today. So 2 years ago, we were in DPW maintenance. We were relying on 311 calls, and we would assign crews just on paper, right? So we get a call that would come in, and we would get a work order to the crew, and they would go do that. They would go clean that singular catch basin and move on to the next catch basin somewhere else, right? Over the last couple of years, we've implemented technology into this process by doing an electronic work order based system using tablets. So no longer do we have paper, we have tablets for our field crews that work orders assigned to them. And so DPW has a dispatcher in the office that actually takes the 311 complaints, looks at them, and then strategically places work orders on those tablets to clean all the catch basins, the subsurface drain lines, and their laterals within a certain area. So we no longer go to just one catch basin that the 311 caller complained about. We actually clean the entire block or blocks. Sometimes you do 2 or 3 at a time, depending on where that 311 case is located. So just to give you some updates compared from 2019 to 2020, when we transitioned into this electronic reporting and work order system, we cleaned about 5% more catch basins in 2020. Not that great of a number, it's about par for the course, right? But to tell the story, we cleaned 42% more subsurface drain lines, which accounts for about 37 miles additional compared to 2019. So why the numbers are important, I want to stress that the methodology of how we're cleaning is critical to this, and it's telling the story that we're being more efficient, right? Catch basins, of course, have to be clean in order for water to enter into the system, but the system also has to be clean. So I could go clean 10,000 catch basins, not clean subsurface at all, and we're not really doing a lot of good, right? So by doing this methodology, we're cleaning the system better as a whole. And I think that's what you're starting to see this year, is that progress is being seen and being made. And so we'll continue to look for those efficiencies and making improvements on that work order process as time goes on. So for 2021, we are not necessarily at the numbers we'd like to be yet. Some reasons for accounting for that is the furloughs, of course, but also the overtime that's not given. Think about season like Mardi Gras, Jazz Fest that would normally happen this month. We issue out a lot of overtime in preparation for those festivals where we go clean not just the corridors that the parades go down, but we'll clean like the entire Fairgrounds Bayou St. John neighborhood of catch basins prior to Jazz Fest. So those cleanings are not occurring because we are not authorized to give overtime at this time. So why the numbers are low right now, the ways that we're planning to make up for that is we are currently in process of hiring several new positions in DPW maintenance, thanks to the Fair Share initiative for that. And so with that, we'll establish additional vac crews and official ditching crews and alley crews, what have you, that will start bringing those numbers up. Obviously, with rainy season approaching and hurricane season approaching, I believe overtime will come into play in order for us to prep for those events, and kind of leading into what DPW maintenance does internally for those events is that, 24 to 72 hours prior to that, we will convert all of our crews, including our asphalt pavement crews, to catch basin crews. So they will go, the asphalt crews will take a dump truck, they'll go clean in front of catch basins, and open the lid and clean what they can as well, trying to just get the debris off the street prior to a storm that occurs. And then also with that, the procedures are our inspectors, our other staff will coordinate with NOPD and coordinate with Homeland Security to barricade off unsafe flooded roadways as they're occurring. So when those reports are coming in, we will also staff to ensure that we can barricade those off so nothing happens. So that's kind of what we do as far as catch basin cleans go, and that's where we are today.
Sorry, Councilmember. I saw Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you. Bringing up Mardi Gras, Josh, thank you so much, and all the work that y'all do up to that point. Is there now any concrete data? Because I know Mr. Montano was very interested in this, like the true cost of events and what they do. Since we didn't have a traditional Mardi Gras this year, which meant all the trash and everything going down the catch basins, do we have more of a finite of what that actually costs us as a city administratively, but also potentially what that costs the system? And that might be a really good thing to really start talking about now on how we make a sustainable Mardi Gras and start cutting back on throws and on plastics and being smarter about how we have these events, because the reality is this COVID showed us that we can still have our own type of Mardi Gras, and we can pivot because Mardi Gras is for us, let's face it, right? It's nice that we have tourists come in and we love that, but if we can do it differently, especially without all the plastic, and it protects our system better, is that one of the reasons we're also not seeing flooding? Then I think it's something that we need to all talk about as a city.
Sure thing. So we don't necessarily have that information right now, but we can certainly obtain it. We do have the data that can tell us the number of catch basins and lines we've cleaned over the last 2 years, and we can look at our staff resources and what that costs and the time that it takes. So certainly we can get that lower lump sum number on what that would cost. Kind of a minor thing, but St. Charles downtown, we have a project coming in the DED that is going to replace, I don't know if you're aware, there's a French drain that goes down every single block on both sides on the gutter. That is the main reason St. Charles clogs during Mardi Gras, because it's an open hole the entire time, right? It's not just the catch basin. This project is going to eliminate that and replace it with, green infrastructure, parking, pervious parking lanes, and standard catch basins. So that project alone is going to significantly help downtown in nearby areas with flooding, just by eliminating the current issue that we have.
Thank you, Josh. So I'm just going to jump right into our construction projects, unless anybody had any additional questions on the catch basins.
Thanks, Randy.
Okay. So as we're entering another storm season, and I don't know if you guys feel it, I don't even feel like we had a break from a storm season, but we are refreshing our stormwater action plan and revisiting what that looks like and making sure everybody is, in step and prepared for the events ahead. Each project, I want to add, has a stormwater pollution prevention plan attached. This is a living document. They keep it on site. We do expect them to improve it as needed and make adjustments as comments are made. And we do enforce that with our partners with Sewage and Water Board, and that's to protect our drainage systems. This is a joint effort. It's a team exercise for each event. It starts with notification from our New Orleans Homeland Security Office with the city that tells us we're expecting some severe weather, and that will then signal us to alert the contractors and consultants, along with our internal teams, construction advisors and outreach and project managers, to start our stormwater checklist. This typically happens 24 to 72 hours prior to a storm, depending on the severity of that storm and the threat as forecasted. All of the contractors will then be directed to stop current operations, or as directed, right? If they can do it and keep their sites clean, we want them to button up what they can before a storm comes, but they will start preparation activities instead of construction, no more digging. And then they will work to clean and secure construction sites, infrastructure, materials, and equipment that are on those sites, and tie them down so that they don't blow away with the wind, don't get washed down with storm drains, etc. And they will do this according to a checklist provided to them. Again, it's broken down into our 72-hour mark, our 48, our 24, and this is monitored closely by our resident inspector and our construction management team. It is recorded by their daily reports, and we do get a copy of that checklist afterwards as a QA/QC. Typically after our event, we have after action reports, because again, these are, living documents. We like to learn from our experiences, and continuous improvement is essential.
Thanks, Randy. Can I ask this question? Is the checklist you described, that sounds great, and the QA/QC back end is really important as well. Is that folded into the contractual terms that they have to fill this out?
I believe it is. I mean, they need to secure their sites, Joe. So, I mean, broad language, yes. And they get a copy of it at the pre-construction meetings.
Okay. I just want to make sure think that is because Ramsey, I think, has done a great job of emphasizing the point that the contract is the law between the parties, and that the language is sort of what we can enforce and live and breathe on. And so obviously, it's great that DPW has this checklist system, that NOSEP is a partner with this, that there's follow-up afterwards. But obviously, while everybody has good intentions, making those intentions binding, I think is really helpful. So I appreciate that. All right. Well, I have 2 comments unless any of my colleagues want to jump in. I'm not seeing anybody. So let me read these. They're from Benjamin Roth. What catch basin and lateral line cleaning? For years, if not decades, the catch basins along Magazine Street, north side through Audubon Park have not been cleaned. Same for St. Charles Avenue near Walnut Street or on other side of the park. Where have all the iPads issued to DPW work crews gone? And y'all, if there's been catch basin and line cleaning there, I think this is one of those places where, some neighborhood outreach would be great, and to be able to tell people what's going on. And then there's a longer comment from Patrick Bro, who writes, catch basins drainage. I recently submitted tickets to have several clogged catch basins cleaned in my neighborhood through the online ticketing system. To my surprise, the cleanout trucks were there within a month. Thank you! Exclamation point. However, the intersection, city side of Spruce and Carrollton, still floods and does not drain. I believe my rain garden drains a little faster than these catch basins. I've submitted an additional ticket for street flooding drainage now, ticket number 2021-767776. This problem has existed as long as I've lived in the neighborhood, 2015, which actually isn't too long, LOL. My thoughts are that the catch basins and street drains under Spruce that stop just short of Carrollton are lower than the water drainage that runs under Carrollton, but I don't know. I'm assuming this is the case because a lot of the parallel streets that intersect Carrollton on the city side of my neighborhoods have the same issue. I don't believe the other side of Carrollton has the same issue. How is the city going to figure out what the issue is? Was this caused when the recent reconstruction of Carrollton was done? Are we investing in technology and data science tools that allow us to more accurately and efficiently understanding where the clogged basin lateral lines are? Once my second ticket is satisfied, is it possible to get more than just a resolved ticket? Is it possible to have the field agent investigating the ticket reach out to me to understand the issue more broadly? Do we look at drainage tickets as a means to an end, or are we just trying to use these tickets to understand problems more holistically? The problem will already exist, but I bet is we plotted the 311 tickets submitted about flooding, drainage, and catch clogs on a map and use a time-lapse function, we could really see an interesting story. Anyway, thanks for the help and allowing for the comments. And maybe just a suggestion there, and Ramsey, I see you're popping up, is there's work going on in this area right now. And so, maybe the time, I don't know if the time is to investigate now and get with Mr. Bro or wait until a little bit down the road. But I see you pop up and just what we're saying there.
I was really going to say, Councilman, I was hoping for you to verbally describe an emoji because I heard you say LOL. And I was just
listen, I am waiting for the first comment that has an emoji or a GIF in it. And when they do, I will present it to them.
I want to hear a verbal description of what's going on in that public comment.
It's the first public comment I've ever read that has LOL in it. I'll tell you that.
One thing on Upper Magazine, Councilman, I've been out there with our crews at least twice myself. And we do get occasional requests from Audubon. And remember, Magazine is like an emergency route for people in storms. So I factually can tell you, Josh doesn't need to say this, we're on that one like white on rice. Much to Audubon's satisfaction, there's just so many damn trees there. And it fills up really quickly. But the Upper Magazine JIR project, Randy and Josh, please don't, feel free to say something, but like once that project's underway, I think we're going to see a very, be patient, it'll be a better situation. On the LOL resident, we'll look into that, absolutely. And I love trees. I don't mean to deride trees, but just those things get filled up pretty quickly, and that whole street floods a week after our guys clean it out. So
Thank you. And then the last thing I had on here is just an update on citywide striping and signage installation. It just, we've gotten a lot of feedback, I think, about trying to do this. And Ramsey, sort of, you've pointed out multiple times that there's money and how we're moving all this around. But really striping and signage kind of seemingly is smaller in scope and scale. And as we're working on FEMA and trying to make quality of life better, as people are requesting, I guess, slower zones and some more instruction on what to do, how that's going to roll out. Is it part of the bond money in June, July? Just a small update on that, please.
Josh, if I can say one thing real quick, Josh, I'm sorry. Just one thing that Councilman Giarrusso is going to help immeasurably is the stimulus money. The 371, I mean, we cut DPW's budget 34% in 2020. And now Josh mentions we're in the process of hiring these folks because we're counting on revenue replacement with fair share, because we didn't do the stuff that we hoped to do with fair share, and being able to, you know, the hiring freeze is no longer a thing once ostensibly, you know, on you know, critical infrastructure items like this, and we'll be in a better place. But that 371 is so critical to some of these things you're bringing up. All right, thank you, Josh. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Randy.
To speak to the traffic calming aspect of this, with both signage and striping requests that we're starting to receive frequently, you know, the complete streets policy that we've recently revised is heavily going to factor into getting these requests done. So with the future bond program, with future projects that do come up, project managers will now be responsible for taking those 3-in-1 requests that they get within the project limits of that area and seeing how to incorporate that into that project, because it is a complete streets measurement that we're asking here for traffic calming, right? So with that, they'll coordinate through Jennifer, like her Minobi program, for example, for the bikes and peds. That is major plan on how we're going to try to address most of those requests. As far as simple maintenance goes, when it comes to signs and striping, our budget is, as Ramsey mentioned, very limited at this time. It's been limited for quite a while. But I just want to say for signs, we do prioritize missing stop signs and one-way signage, because obviously, for obvious reasons, right? Safety is a major concern for that if they're missing. And then after that, we prioritize based on, again, safety. So depending on that funding, we address as much as we can. So what we don't address, we will put into a project where we can, when funding is allowed and programs are created based on the complete streets policy.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know and helpful, because I know we're starting to see a little bit, as you alluded to, Josh, we're starting to see some more requests come across, and you know, I can think of 2 or 3 that are close to ongoing work right now, 1 or 2 where there's probably work coming. So how we fold it on is important. I know Councilmember Palmer will lead the co-chairing effort on the complete streets at the end of the month, and I see her coming off of mute. So Councilmember.
Yeah, thank you. Real quick, to go back to the last agenda item real fast, is there a length of time it takes average for a catch basin replacement?
For a catch basin, like a repair?
Yeah, or like even switching out if one gets broken or is gone.
So we do have a dedicated program now. We've had it in place for probably about a year or so now, where it's focused on replacing catch basins. That's what it's intended to do. So our inspectors, the way it works is our 3-in-1. When a 3-in-1 comes in for that request, an inspector goes out and identifies the problems, reports that back to the engineering division that manages the program within a week. You know, once the 3-in-1 comes in, within the week, the inspection report is done. After that, it is assigned to one of our contractors, kind of based on safety prioritization. So if it's on major corridors, or if it's, you know, the condition that the thing is in, if it's just a busted frame versus a complete missing lid where someone can fall in, right? We prioritize based on that safety factor and put it into that program. So we will likely continue this program moving forward.
Great, and we have a standing contract with a company that just does that.
It's one of our maintenance contracts that we use, or we'll hopefully have multiple with this. It's not necessarily a company that does that, but they do this work every day, both in the capital program with JIRR and with us. They have been for years. So they're very familiar with repairs.
And then, so do we have them like on order already? Like you have a bunch of them ready to go?
Yes, the contractor has supply of the necessary material in order to make that. It's more of just getting that assigned to them to get fixed.
Okay. And then same thing regarding your existing crosswalks. We can kind of pivot into that. Do y'all have a standing contract to fix up existing ones?
We do. We have a striping contract. That's the whole intent behind it. The challenge with that is, again, is the funding that's allocated to that specific function. We're looking into ways to use bond money to set up a similar program like the catch basins moving forward to try to handle this, trying to specialize these type of requests that come in and dedicating resources to that. But yes, we do have a contract that does that.
Okay, because my understanding here is, I know Ramsey was, and so was Gilbert, were very clear that with the bond money and the bond issuance, that there'd be money in there for maintenance to make sure that we always had this kind of funding source.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so because like, for instance, I'm just gonna throw out my top three real fast. There's already a crosswalk on North Rampart at St. Anne, but that's been, it needs to be done brighter. And obviously a flashing light or something else would be ideal there. Right?
Yeah, we actually have, Jennifer actually is already looking into that intersection for exactly that and making them pet improvements for that. Yep.
And then same with striping at Piety and Charters, who cross over to go to the bridge at Crescent Park. That's been another like hot point right there. And
Okay.
then I know this is probably not y'all, but I just want to bring it up publicly because we've been on this for 6 months and it's a big problem. Y'all know the new Edna Carr and General Meyer is just opening, and in the fall it'll be full on. I appreciate that General Meyer is a state highway, but we've really been trying to get crosswalks right there and flashing lights. And so I've put this out to the state multiple times. I just don't know what else we can do and how to handle that situation. Can we just do it anyway and not even ask them?
Let me get back with you on that with some more information, and I'll update you.
I mean, it's just like kids, you know what I'm saying? And they're young adults, and there's a McDonald's right across the street. And we know what that means with high school students. It's going to be like crazy going back and forth.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
I just want to add, so I think the health department, Jane Goshazi has already been working directly with it.
He has been, and he's been on it, and I just want to thank him for it. So yes, thank you for bringing him up. We've been very proactive. I'm just getting anxious because we've all been proactive for about 6 months now, and nothing's happening. And that's not to do with Django or anybody else on y'all's side. I'm worried that there might be a bottleneck with a lot of folks don't understand that General Meyer, and we have other streets like that too. They're technically state, and it's a little bit more difficult. Like, you know, we're still waiting on Woodland to get all of our bike lanes on there, but the state's being slow. So anyway, just throwing that out there. But I thank y'all for your work.
Thank you, council member. We have one comment. I think it's kind of more related to the JIR work. And I know it's an issue that DPW is aware of. It's from Avery Penman, who writes, "We were told on Monday, April 5th, that they would be starting construction on our street and to move our cars out of the construction zone by 4/6. There is no definition of the zone or any specific timeline. So we moved our cars to a side street that same day, 4/5. There are no signs or indications that work would be done on this side street, Crete. We left town on Thursday morning, 4/8, and left one car on Crete. Again, no signs of any work being done when we left. Our neighbor called us in the morning of Friday, 4/9, to tell us there are now signs indicating we need to move our cars off Crete. As we were out of town until Sunday, 4/11, we were not able to move the car. We had a neighbor place a note in the car explaining we were out of town and asked them to please just move the car around the corner. Instead, within 24 hours of signs being posted, the construction crew impounded our car. It's my understanding that this action is reserved for cars parked illegally. We did not have the car parked illegally. In fact, we're trying to comply with instructions from the construction crew. It cost us $250 to get the car out of the impound. This is a shameless money grab by the city." And so I know we've passed that along to DPW for consideration. Ramsey and team, I just want to also say, closing this out, I think it's helpful for everybody to hear about the stimulus money and standing the fair share funds back up. You know, the importance of that, and I think you said that the budget DPW is cut by 34%. that we're all looking forward to even more work. I know there was a lot of pain today in going through the discussion of timelines and communication, but also the fact that there's money that's coming means that there's going to be more work in the future. And that's something I think we should all be proud of. So I appreciate the fact that you, Mary, Randy, Josh, Joe, David, I think Ron Spooner and Courtney Barnes were on the line for Sewage and Water Board. If you all were in chambers, we would have been outnumbered by the number of administration people who are here. So we appreciate the fact so many folks were here to answer our calls. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So move. Second, Mr. Chairman.
There you go. That was fast. Moved by Councilwoman Palmer, seconded by Councilmember Banks. All in favor?
Aye.
We have 4 yays and we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Everybody wear a
Thank
mask
you,
and get your
Councilmember.
shot if you haven't gotten one yet.
I feel like you've said that before.
And I'm going to keep saying it until we get to total vaccinated population. So yes, please get it if